I'm not comfortable saying out loud to people moments of my own weakness and acknowledging things that might make me look bad. Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Shakedown. I'm your host, Mallory G. Today's video is more, along the shakedown breakdown format. I wanted to do a little reflecting and share with you some thoughts that I have. This is super well spoken. Okay, I'm literally just shooting from the hip here. So a lot of you know that I have started a master's program for school counseling. Part of that program, though, blends together or bleeds over into clinical mental health. So a lot of the courses are the same, but then we just take the more specialized school counseling, courses, and etc. But one of the courses that I'm taking is group therapy experience. And and part of that course is actually being a part of a group and experiencing the dynamics and what it means to be in a group and how to facilitate one. And just, it's easier to run a group in the future if you've already been a part of one, so you have an idea of what to expect. So this video really has nothing to do with MLMs per se, but pretty much everything can be tied back to problematic behavior that we see take place in MLMs all the time. So just stick with me, and if you're here for some thoughtful conversation or at least thought-provoking monologuing, stick around. So I don't want to share, I'm not going to share in this, for the sake of confidentiality of my group members, I'm not going to share really a lot of what prompted this conversation or my contribution to this conversation today. But it's a realization that I had with myself about 5, 6, could be 7 years ago. And I wanted to share it with you all because I think that it's a really important conversation for people to have, specifically white people to have. And I also think it's a really important discomfort that a lot of white people will avoid because it is really hard and really uncomfortable to be faced with your own prejudices, systemic racism. And so I'm going to share with you something I shared tonight in group. Not because I want to receive comments that are like, good for you, that's so big. I'm sharing it with you because more people need to do what I'm doing, in a sense, more white people. Just hear me out. About 5 or 6, 7 years ago, I was working in a very urban school, and I had a lot of difficulties with behavior. I had some behavior issues in class. And what I realized later, as I was reflecting back on the year, at the end of each year, the behavior issues I was having were with my students who were Black. I also want to preface that as a society, we should be using people first language. Note that I didn't say my Black students. My students who are Black, them being Black is just one of many traits of them. And we as white people who are white, we don't often be described as, and then this white person said to me, and then this white person walked in, and this white person. That's not how we're ever described in stories. But when somebody is Indian, Black, Asian, we were raised just that was something that was important to the story. How many times do we start with, I was at this place, and then this Black guy said, and then this Asian person, it is, and I don't say it like, some people are like, well, you might, but I don't. You probably, if you're white, you probably do. If you're white in America, you probably do. And so I realized that the issues I was having behaviorally was with my students who are Black. And I was far more strict on them than I was on their white counterparts. And I would justify it. I would say, well, these students don't behave that way. I would try to justify the need to discipline, the need to hold accountable for those students behaving in a way that was different from what I had decided was appropriate. And as I grew and learned, a lot of those behaviors were cultural. There were ways of upbringing that I was never, and still to this day will never understand, not for lack of education, but just for lack of experience. I can understand on a certain level, okay, this is a cultural norm. This is a way of speaking. This is a way of living. This is a way of style. This is a way of whatever that I can understand is cultural, but I don't understand the experience and I can never expect to. And so I was expecting my students who were Black to behave like my students who are white, to force themselves to be different, to fit into a culture that was not theirs. It came up also, a mention of like when people who are Black or of any other ethnicity than white have different hair, long nails that are very vibrant and bold and beautiful. There's a judgment attached to people, women particularly, women who have long nails. Now, personally, I have had long nails before. I have a hard time putting my contacts in. I have a hard time functioning with long nails. But that's just like a personal thing. But what ends up being projected onto the Black community or women who have long nails is a sense of judgment. And what essentially it becomes is a microaggression. If I said to a person who was Black, I don't know how you do that, I couldn't, blah, 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 the way that I would end up phrasing it would likely come across as a microaggression, as a judgment on their culture, of what they want to do, who they are, and how they express themselves. And in my time of I'm still growing, I'm still learning. I grew today. Like I had a lot of eye-opening experiences today, but it was a really difficult and uncomfortable, a deeply uncomfortable feeling for me to realize that I disciplined my students who were Black more strictly than I did my students who were white. That I did hold those preconceived thoughts, those notions, those judgments of my students who were Black, who came in with bigger hair, different hair, longer nails, dressing a certain way, speaking a certain way. And if you listen to Word Slut by Amanda Montell, she has a whole chapter on how dialect, the way we speak in different cultures, how America has tried to force minorities to speak the white way. I intentionally am not saying the right way, the white way, because correct grammar has been associated in America with being white. And I saw this in my students too, when I had students who were Black who would say to other students who were Black, "You talk white." And I didn't know how to take that. Just listening to it, at first I said, he's not talking white, he's talking educated. And I thought I was defending the student. But as I keep growing, I don't know that that was defending the student. Because to say he's not talking white, he's talking educated, well, but that's what that's what we push here. We push the idea that you have to talk this way because this is how white people talk. And so what I expressed tonight in my group was, I couldn't tell you how these prejudices of mine even became a part of me. I cannot think back to my childhood and say, oh, my parents did this, my parents did that. because I don't, one, have memories of anything that would fall into that category. And two, I don't view my parents as inherently racist. They're not. But they do have systemic prejudices that do not make them any less loving or less caring or less wonderful. But because of the world they grew up in, there are parts of them that must have then been passed on to me. And how they were passed on to me, I don't know. And that's what's so unclear. But I had a conversation with someone a couple years back about this very thing. And the whole point of people who are white, who are trying to grow and trying to change the narrative, is not to sit back and say, well, I'm not racist. I couldn't be racist. I do this. I'm part of this. I'm a member of this. And I have these black friends, blah, blah, blah. But you can be all of those things and still have some things that are, some parts of you that are systemically ingrained into you, that you will just, as a gut reaction, think or respond. It doesn't make you a bad person per se, but what's so important is to be able to start recognizing when you have those moments, when you judge that woman who is black for her nails, for her clothing, for the way she speaks, and saying, why am I judging her for that? And then really sitting in it and breaking it down for yourself. But instead, people who are white are more likely to try to justify it and make excuses for why they think that way. And at that time, I was doing that. I was young, I was naive, I was learning and growing. And I still have so much learning and growing to do. I cannot sit here right now and say that in 5, 10, 15 years, there might not be something else that comes up that I realize is also systemically racist. And maybe it doesn't have to have anything to do with people who are black. It might have to do with people who are Native American, people who are, indigenous people who are Asian. It could be something that comes up out of nowhere. And then I have to sit in that uncomfortableness. We have to be willing to do the work. To acknowledge when those uncomfortable moments happen and sit in that moment and be uncomfortable and then reflect and try to figure out, okay, why do I have this thought? And if you can't figure it out, then okay, let's not try to worry about how it happened. Let's try to work on, all right, well, how do I break this cycle? How do I make sure that I don't pass this same inherent feeling, inherent thought to my own children? So that eventually our children, our children's children, this will just be, hopefully, I can only hope and pray, non-existent. I don't know how many generations of children this will have to take. But what's important, and again, I beg of you to understand that I'm not making this video to have anybody be like, good for you, I'm so proud. I want to use this as a moment to encourage all people who are white to embrace those moments, embrace that uncomfortable feeling. Because I promise you, when I shared that in group today, I was very uncomfortable. I felt my face get hot. Because I'm not comfortable saying out loud to people moments of my own weakness and acknowledging things that might make me look bad. But it is in acknowledging what we can improve on that will make us better. So my whole point of this reflection today is to encourage you, especially for people who are white, to sit in the uncomfortable sauce. Just sit in it. Experience it, feel it, recognize it, and then figure out how to change it in yourself. I don't know the answer for you. For me, it was education. For me, it was listening. For me, it was really looking at and breaking down, okay, what was the scenario in which the discipline had to occur? And really breaking down my responses to the actions. Was the student out of line? Maybe there was something that they did wrong, but then did I spark a react? everything is so nuanced. And so I hope that this reaches some ears of people who maybe are sitting at home thinking, at various times, I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. That you'll hear this and maybe think, there's probably some things I could work on. We all have things that we can work on every day. And how can I tie this back into MLM? I mean, we're going to make a far stretch. You ready for it? Let's reach. There's racism rampant in MLMs. We see it all the time. And a lot of it is really major microaggressions. White women who are white, who genuinely believe they're just being nice and what's the big deal. We see it all the time. We see it all the time in social media. We have countless stories that have been shared about it. So sit in that uncomfortableness and start to dissect all the microaggressions and all the moments that you participated in, were a part of any kind of systemic racism, and break it down and figure out why and figure out how you can change it and how you can move forward to make a better world for all people, not just us if you're white. I hope that you got a little bit of something out of this video today. I am going to edit this right now and I'm going to post it right now. So you're getting me raw. I mean, the only thing I'm editing out is that phone call and my sneezing, which if I edited it correctly, you'll be like, she sneezed and got a phone call. So I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and hopefully maybe I'll be able to make some more reflection videos on my master's program and the things that I am learning. I hope that you are all having a wonderful, wonderful day, week, month, year. And remember, as I always say, through kindness, education, empathy, and patience, we create a lasting movement. So keep calm, and I'll see you next time on The Shakedown.